Okay, any questions around that, brothers, or any issues around what we've discussed so far? Go on, brother.
My question is related to the fourth
Yes.
way of doing it. So the Prophet ﷺ prayed 4 rakat.
Yes.
What's your view on the issue that when you're traveling you pray 2 and you're allowed to pray 2, you shouldn't give up the concessions that Allah gives you? But the Prophet ﷺ prayed 4 in that particular situation, even though they only pray 2 each.
No. Jazakallah khair. Remember, Salatul Khawf is a specific, very special salah, so the description and everything else differs from other situations. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one who is showing us. In fact, that would, that hadith is very clear proof that is permissible. That description is permissible because we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it in Safar. So, to bring an objection to say that you can't do it in Safar, we said this is the evidence against it. The evidence is there that Rasulullah did it, so therefore it is allowed.
But we should only use it in Salatul Khawf.
Yes, in Salatul Khawf, of course. No. And also al-qasr in generally when you're traveling, shortening the salah is a rukhsah from Allah Azza wa Jal. If someone did complete the salah, salah is still valid. Although it would be considered khilaf sunnah, meaning that the sunnah is to shorten the salah while you are traveling. But if someone did complete the salah, then that salah is still valid and permissible. Wallahu a'lam.
Regarding the fourth Salatul Khawf, the Prophet prayed 4 rak'ah. You mentioned that he sat down, he didn't do the taslim. Can you just go over that again?
The fourth description, the Rasul said he
sat down, but he didn't make taslim, and then the second group joined. Is that right?
Did I say he didn't make taslim? I said he prayed 2 rak'ah with the first group, and then he would stand up and the second group would join him for another 2 rak'ah. So the first group obviously would finish, and then the second group would come and join him.
Oh, so it's just 4 rak'ah straight?
Yeah, he would do 4 rak'ah.
And the fifth one is he does 2 rak'ah. And he does taslim. Then he does another 2 rak'ah.
That's right, yeah. So it's basically like separate prayers. 2 separate salah he's doing there. And they said that the first one is fard and the second is nafil. Okay? Right, brothers. Now, all the descriptions that we've looked at so far, these are all in while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was traveling. Okay, so no ishkal, if somebody is traveling, then any of these descriptions, as the ulama have said, is permissible. And I mentioned previously that some of the ulama have chosen one description over others. Right? Now, what about when you are not traveling? What happens when you're not traveling? Okay, so we know when you're not traveling, you can't shorten the salah. As for Salatul Fajr, no problem, because Salatul Fajr is 2 rak'ah. So that can remain, the description that we looked at, those can be carried out. But what about Dhuhr, Asr, Isha, Maghrib is a special case. What about those prayers while in a state of fear but at home? Possibly you're under siege and the enemy is around you, but you're at home. So how do you do Salatul Khawf in that situation? So
would you just double up the number of rak'ah, but for certain description of Salatul Khawf could not be applicable?
No.
Rasulullah praying 4 rak'ah, that narration would become obsolete in that situation, couldn't be applied.
No, Jazakallah khair. So pretty much what the ulama say, in the case of someone who's at home and doing Salatul Khawf, so for 4 rak'ah salah, the Dhuhr, Asr and Isha, then instead of the 1 rak'ah Imam praying with the first group, the Imam would do 2 rak'ah, and then the second group, he would do 2 rak'ah with the second group. Of course, there are some descriptions which would become complicated, and I haven't seen the ulama discussing that. So, but generally, some of them, if you think back to the ways we looked at them, it is possible, 2 rak'ah, Imam does with the first group, and then he would do 2 rak'ah with the second group. Yes, so in the case of, let's look back at the first description. You remember the first description? Hadith of Jabir, when the enemy is in front and you're facing towards the Qibla. Okay? So what would happen? So you're at home now, so you're going to do 4 rak'ah. So how would you do it?
So the first group does, the Imam would do his 4 rak'ah. So first group would do 2 rak'ah with the Imam. and then they will stop and they'll go back, and then the second group do the remaining their 2 rak'ah with the imam, and then the imam finishes with the taslim, and then they would get up, and then they'll finish their another 2 while the first group that's still standing, they finish their 4, and now the first group finish the another 2, the first 2 that they missed.
Is that the first description?
I think
The first one was
the second one.
yeah, you're looking at the second one. The first one was when they're all praying together, right? First one is when they're doing all salah together. They start together and they finish together. It's just the difference between is the sujood, when one group doesn't follow the imam in the sujood, right? And then they move lines. So if you remember when we discussed this, the hadith mentions that the first group, when it's just 2 rak'ah, the first group in the first rak'ah they do ruku with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They all do ruku together, and the first group does sujood with him while the second group is standing behind, right? So if they did this and they finished the 1 rak'ah, what they would do in the second rak'ah, as we mentioned, is that the second group comes forward, and the first group goes back. Alright, so that's the 2 rak'ah finish. In the third rak'ah, then again they would change lines. So that second group would come forward and that first group would go back. And the last rak'ah they would do the same. So basically they would be changing rows 4 times, 4 times. Yes, bro.
They do 2 rak'ah.
Not 4 times, twice. Is it twice? Yeah, it would be twice. Yeah.
2 rak'ah. First time we'll do the first 2 rak'ah in front, and then after the first 2 rak'ah go to the back.
Wallahu alam, that's a possibility, but what I've heard from one of the mashayikh, Sheikh Muhammad Mukhtar, this is how he described it, that they would basically after each one they would change, or in the second rak'ah they would change, and also in the last rak'ah they would change as well. This is how I heard it. Wallahu alam. Does that make sense or not?
That's excessive movement.
Yeah.
More than necessary.
Yes, but it's a special case though. It's a special situation, so wallahu alam, the circumstances would allow it, and also that it would give each one their kind of, if you like, the adl in the salah. So each one would have that front line position and also that back line position as well. So each one would get that fair share of being in the front and also in the back as well. This is what I know. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And also in the case of the other prayers, for example, the second description, the hadith of Ibn Umar. Remember that what happens in that one, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam finishes the salah before the groups. Okay, so in this situation, what would happen? Can anybody talk about if we're doing 4 rakat? Yes, go on, brother.
Is that there are 2 groups?
Mhm.
So first group would perform 2 rak'ah with the Prophet, and then they will go back, and then the second group will come, and they'll perform 2 rak'ah, and then the Prophet's finished, he done 4 rak'ah.
That's right.
And then they will finish their 2 remaining, that first group. Then they'll do taslim, and then the first group that have still 2 remaining, they'll perform it on their own.
Jazakallah khair. Yes, so like that. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would do 2 rak'ah with the first group, right? And then the first group would go off. So remember, in this situation, they don't finish the salah. So first group would go off, so they would have 2 rakat left to finish. The second group would come and join him, and the Prophet ﷺ would pray 2 rakat with that second group, and so that's his 4 rakat finished. So he would now do his taslim. So the second group's got 2 rakat left, and the first group's got 2 rakat left. So as we said before, the second group would either finish their 2 rakat themselves, and also then after them the first group would also finish their 2 rakat by themselves. Okay, so that's how they would do their 4 rakat. And similarly would be the third description as well. Yeah, there's a follow, brothers. Anybody lost or completely confused? Okay, what about Maghrib then? Okay, so 4 rakat, alhamdulillah, is okay. What about the case of Maghrib? Maghrib, you have 3 rakat, and that's not shortened while you are at home or traveling. Okay, so Maghrib is not shortened in any situation. You have to do 3 rakat wherever you are. So how do you do Maghrib according to the descriptions, some of the descriptions that we've looked at?